The problem is, when I get onto the bus, picks up at City Hall, right in the heart of Nampa, heading out of the city, there's one other person on that bus, picked up from Caldwell. Then we go to 3 more stops and nobody gets on. We finally get the CWI and we pick up one other person.
Sebastian, thank you for coming, sir.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate you. Listen, Nampa is a big deal, right? Nampa's budget is an even bigger deal. Nampa is, I think, the fastest growing city in the state of Idaho. Is that accurate?
That's different articles say different things, but at least it's
up
the
there.
best run city in the state of Idaho.
That's another article that I saw, which is awesome. You're on the city council for the city of Nampa, your District 6, I believe.
That's
is that
correct.
accurate?
Yep.
Nampa is very interesting because it is growing. It's also one of the top 3. I have Idahopoly, the Monopoly version for, and one of the questions, if you land on like the community chest, is like, can the person to the left answer the top largest cities? And it's Boise, Pocatello, and then Nampa. So Nampa's great. You also have the Egg Factory, which is an awesome restaurant. I've been there several times. Big fan of that. But look, budgets are difficult. Nampa's growing. Some people are critical of Nampa raising property taxes. It's also been in the news for a number of other cultural things as well. But Nampa, at least from what I can understand from talking to city council and other people, is working really hard to honor the tax dollars that people are sending in, honor the hardworking individuals that live there. Talk to me about what you guys did with the budget. And specifically, the hot topic of the day is Valley Transit, that you feel like it's not really warranted the benefit that citizens get per the cost.
Sure. So, and the city is working very hard, and that's one side that I don't think a lot of people talk about. The mayor and finance department said, hey, every department, we got to cut back about 5% of the budget. We need to maintain what we're doing, but we also need to have cutback where you got to work hard to be efficient with taxpayer money. Always appreciated. One of the little budgets out of the 290...
Pull this guy just a little bit closer. Like,
a little closer. Right
there you go. The people want to hear from you, Sebastian.
They want to hear me. There we go.
There you go.
They're going to hear it a lot louder now.
There you go.
Out of a $290 million budget, there's just one little area where I have found that I feel that is not a proper use of taxpayer money, and that's Valley Regional Transit. Valley Regional Transit is the transit system that services the whole Treasure Valley. Right. I think it was voted on and brought in the 90s. I think it was only 1,000 votes, maybe a couple hundred votes to create that department. But Valley Regional Transit services Caldwell, Nampa, Meridian, and Boise. That's good and great. For a long time, people said there's never anybody riding those buses. What's going on? And then Valley Regional Transit got sponsors and they boarded up the windows with those cover-ups and you couldn't see in there. So you didn't know if people were or weren't riding. Neither here or there. I said when I got elected, before I go and try and bulldog anybody's budget, I want to see for myself what's really going on. So for 5 weeks, I go to school in Boise at the University of Idaho College of Law. So every day I'm in downtown Boise. I said I'm going to ride the bus every day to school and every day back. And in town, I'm going to try and catch rides around town, see how great it's working. Little did I know, I have to drive 9 minutes from my house to a bus stop to be able to use the bus system. Then I hop on the 42 or the 40, and then we have all these routes that go through Nampa, back behind Amazon, into Meridian by Roaring Springs. We're going everywhere. It actually was pretty close to the same amount of time to get to the school as it would have taken me to drive my own car. Great bonus. The problem is, when I get onto the bus, picks up at City Hall, right in the heart of Nampa, heading out of the city, there's one other person on that bus, picked up from Caldwell. Then we go to 3 more stops and nobody gets on. We finally get the CWI and we pick up one other person who happens to work for Idaho Power.
I love that you know these people. You know them first name basis. You're like, hey, Steve.
I know one's Dave. I do know Dave because I talk to him more frequently, but I talk to everybody on that bus.
All 2 people?
All 9 people.
Okay.
All 9 people. And they're not all from Nampa. And I say this, I don't mean to demean the work of Valley Regional Transit. Elaine Clegg is the new CEO. They brought her on to create efficiency, transparency, and I think she's done that. She's done a good job in that role. It's just we're trying to make a round block fit in a square hole or a square block fit in a round hole, and it's not working. And it's not going to work unless we are willing to invest $6, $7, $8 million of our budget to really expand the efficiency, the routes, and what the VRT can do.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com. Okay, hang on, back up here. So you're saying, look, when I transport myself from Nampa to Boise to school and then back, it's like single digit people that ride this bus.
Single digit.
Okay. And it's not that VRT, Valley Regional Transit, is like late to stops. It's not that the vehicles are poorly maintained.
Nope.
It's not that there are like massive fights and people are terrified of being on it. It's
no.
literally that it is not being utilized by the populace for any transportation means, at least not by a significant portion at all.
No, we're a commuter community. People want to drive. Downtown, that's the only place in the entire valley where you can walk stop to stop. Everywhere else, you have to drive if you want to go get lunch. You have to drive if you want to go get coffee. You have to drive if you want to go see a friend. You can't walk or bike within the valley. Right. It's 22 miles from my house to the College of Law. So your options are drive yourself and have the freedom of no bus schedules, because at the time they had 3 in the morning, 4:50, 5:50, 6:50, and 3 in the afternoon, 4:50, 5:50, 6:50. So if you got there in the morning, you'd have to spend the whole day there and then leave during the peak hour, because that's the only time people were using transit anyway. They've now expanded it because we're paying more money, that it'll go every hour, and great, that might be a solution. I don't think it will be, because the people utilizing those systems are free thinkers. They want to be able to get from without any hesitation, without having to walk 2 miles, which I would have to do. If I went from my house to a bus station, it's 2 miles. Within town, it takes me 7, 8, 9 minutes to get to the bus station. Then I've got to leave my car in a parking lot, hop on a bus, and ride. They're clean. They're safe. They have Wi-Fi. I actually, in the morning, would read my case law before getting into class, and it was very convenient. It was like having a chauffeur. But it's not worth $700, $800, $900, $1 million a year to pay for just me and one other person from Nampa to use that bus system.
Okay. And by the way, that makes sense. Like $1 million to transport 2 people, bad idea. You mentioned just though a minute ago, you're like, look, we'd have to increase the budget for this $6, $7, $8 million. What do you mean? Because what it sounds like is you're saying, hey, look, this is not a resource that's being widely utilized by anybody, right? The resource is being delivered effectively, but it's not something that's in effect valued with people's feet. They're like, look, I'm not going down to the bus. So like, what would paying an extra $8 million do to increase the utility of it?
Well, it would increase stops. It would increase routes. So right now, and when I say that people aren't utilizing, they're not utilizing that route for sure. There's something else called ride on demand, where you can call if you're an elderly person, they'll pick you up and take you to the bus stop or go and do that. That's a service that is used. That's something that I think should continue to be funded if they'll allow us. But we have pulled back funding, and they said, great, if you want to get rid of that, then you're only going to get this. So you're not going to give us the thing that we're looking for. You're going to give us the thing that we don't want.
Okay, wait, explain that to me. So you're saying, hey, look, we're going to decrease the funding to VRT.
Yep.
And in response, Valley Regional Transit is saying, fine, if you're restricting our funding, we're going to take away the ride on demand, when in reality, you guys are just saying, we want to take away these larger transportation routes that aren't effective. Yep. Don't take away the ride on demand, just take away these unutilized routes.
That's right. And it has kind of been a strong arming, and another councilman had used that phrase, and I think it's spot on. Before it was, if we cut funding to VRT, the disabled community is going to greatly hurt from it. It could cost lives. It will cost healthcare visits. So there was a strong arm, and it was something where we had to really think about, do we want to have that be the impact of what we're doing? And then we called their bluff, and we said, I rode that bus for 5 weeks. There is somebody on there. He is blind, and he listens on his phone, and it gives him directions of where he's going. Very important that he has a way to getting to his doctor's appointments. I would be the first one to subsidize him being able to have a private chauffeur pick him up for $30,000 or $40,000 a year. We don't need to spend $1 million just for him, but whatever it would take to support him, sure. So coming back to what you said, it was chalked up instead of one whole budget, because they knew the direction we were going. We gave a lot of warning. If this is not effective and is not being utilized, we're cutting it from our budget. We're going to be good stewards of taxpayer money.
Sure.
So instead of giving us the full $770,000 this year, because it increases every year, this year it's $770,000. Last bit of ARPA money's going away after this year. They said, okay, we're going to keep $430 in this budget, or $530 in this budget, and then we're going to put $230 in the streets budget. So then if we lose one bit, we'll still have another to fall back on. And that's exactly what happened. We funded one portion to try and get the right on demand. And then out of the streets budget, the $233,000, we cut it out. We said, no, we're approving this budget without this line item. We just received notification. If we don't reinstate that $233,000, you're not getting right on demand. You're just getting the 40 and the 120.
Okay, back up. So the streets budget that you cut is the one where it's like, let's get rid of these long routes that aren't being utilized.
That's right.
And
we didn't know that. We didn't know that initially. They just said, hey, there's two different parts of the budget. We need the whole thing to make it work. And I said, well, we shouldn't be given the whole thing. This is coming from somebody that's personally write it. There is great benefit if it works for your specific lifestyle, but I don't think it's worth the funds. So I really fought hard on this. But they didn't tell us, if we cut this portion, you lose this. If we cut this portion, you lose that. They just said, hey, some disabled people are really going to be affected by this. Your minority populations are really going to be hurt by this. I recommend you don't do this. So what do? They cut that portion out and they said, okay, we're just leaving the 40 and the 120, the long routes, and we're cutting out the on-demand ridership.
Why? Is this essentially like why would they do that? Because it sounds like the thing that really, really matters is, hey, look, we need on demand. We need these particular things. This is the other stuff that doesn't, like you're saying, the long routes. It's like nobody's on these long routes and we're funding these budgets to get this. Mm-hmm. Like what's going on for VRT that they're motivated? And I know you can't speak for them.
Sure.
100%. Yes, you can. No, but
well, I'm going to.
What is it that's going on with them that they're essentially, in your words, trying to strong arm you guys into funding the entire budget?
They really need these fixed routes to be funded to be able to subsidize this rider share, this on-demand ridership. So if we don't fund this, they don't have enough in the budget. They don't have enough pickups. They don't have enough places where they can do on-demand and take people around. So it's one of those things. Is it the chicken or the egg? What are we going to do? Do we fund this in order to have this? And then it's just going to continue. Next year, it's going to be upwards of $900,000. The year after, it's going to be $1 million. And we're not the only one in discussion about not funding VRT. It's not utilized anywhere other than Meridian and Boise, and even then the numbers are low. So when another department cuts out this line item of their budget, the rest of us have to subsidize them. And so go the dominoes in that sense.
So essentially what it sounds like, you're saying, hey, look, here's the thing. We have this really, really necessary service, this on-demand ridership, right? And that they're saying that costs a certain amount of money. But it's possible that the amount of money they're saying that costs is not the entire cost of running that service. So Correct. What they're saying is like, we have to fund these other things that are underutilized to essentially subsidize the things we really need. Yep. Why not just rewrite their budget or ask them? It's like, hey, what is the actual, tell me how much it would actually cost to get these things we want. Because like, I want the steak. I don't want the baked potato. Mm-hmm. And who wants broccoli? Nobody. Like, keep your broccoli. And they're like, well, if you whatever, if you want the steak, you have to buy the broccoli.
That's
it's
right.
like, I don't exactly want the broccoli. Like, the broccoli always gets shoved to the side of the plate. Nobody eats it. And if they do, it's out of spite, right? Like, leave the broccoli. Like, tell me what the actual cost of the steak is. I don't know why I went to food. I guess I'm hungry. But it
was a perfect analogy. It blew mine out of the water. Okay, so we're going to stick with the steak and broccoli.
Great. So is that kind of the argument?
Exactly
which is,
right.
Look, we need to have like a come to Jesus moment. What will it cost to get the things we want? And what can we save by eliminating the things we don't need? Like, is that kind of where you are with VRT at this point?
Before I got on council, I've been on 7 months now. This issue was an issue before I got on council. Darrell Bruner was before me. not in my specific seat, but he'd been on the council for 8 years. For 8 years straight, he said, how many people ride the bus? We don't know. How many people ride the bus? We don't know.
What do you mean we don't know? We have satellites. Like, we have iPhones. Can you
Well,
do like a blurry video so nobody's identified on the bus, but you can count the bodies coming on and off? Like, what do you mean we don't know?
and so when I got on the bus, I took a picture. There's a camera mounted right where the bus driver's sitting facing the seats. I asked the bus driver, is that live? Is that recording right now? He said, oh yeah, that's live. We need to know if crime happens in the bus. I said, great. You know, if crime's happening in the bus, then you sure as heck know who's getting on and getting off. Give me the numbers. I want to see the numbers. But they don't tell you how many individuals are riding the bus. They call them riders, or the routes. So they give you these inflammatory numbers of 90 or 100,000 riderships. I don't know if it's by stops or what. So they say 100,000 people. And I got to the point where I said, there was 9 of us on that bus. Are you saying there was 80,000 on the other bus somehow? Because there was only 9 of us on this one. They say, well, it's not actually based off of people, but maybe the stops.
Right. So if one person rides from one stop in one trip to a stop that's, let's say he starts at stop A and stops at stop B.
Yep.
Or excuse me, D. So you have A, B, C, D. That's 3 routes.
Yep.
Right? Because again, you have 3 spaces he transported
Or rides,
through.
or whatever the number is.
So then they're like, we had 3 riderships from stop to stop here. And in reality, it was 1 person. So on these long routes where you're going to say through 20 stops, you 9 people, let's say through 20 stops, they're like, all right, but that's 9 people, 20 stops. That's 180 riderships. Is that more?
That's exactly right. From what I know, because it hasn't been completely transparent. And you can look back on the discussions. We had workshops and in city council, it was talked about. And I said, how many people were butts in seats? Well, we don't calculate it that way. So
well, can you start?
And that's where it's extremely frustrating to go in without complete transparency. And that's the only thing that I'm not advocating, that we let minorities and people in minority groups suffer and aren't able to go to doctor's appointment. Nobody, I hope nobody is that way. That isn't the proper role of government. We need to take care of those that need taken care of, the elderly, folks on Medicaid, so on. This is where the big kicker came in for me. We were in budget setting in July. I happened to be in Spain, so I was remote, and I was listening to this, and they got on there, and I said, this is not being utilized by the senior community. This is not being utilized, as far as I know, from the people that you are saying have to be at these doctor's appointments or they die, or cancer treatments or whatever else.
Right. The health impaired, the elderly, the minorities.
People that can't get to the grocery store because they took their license 10 years ago because they're 98. What's happening to these folks? And they say, well, there's actually a federal program that will pay to have the senior citizens and Medicaid recipients get picked up and they get taken where they need to. I said, oh, is that part of this budget? Is VRT funding that? And they said, no, that's a separate budget. I said, so you told us from the very beginning, this is who we're servicing, this is who needs it the most, and they're not even utilizing it? That's not right. Be transparent with us. Tell us what's actually needing to be funded and who it's being funded for. The people that are getting on that bus and using it are employees of big corporations like Idaho Power, professors at Boise State and U of I, and students. Now, the students are the only one probably in there, and I'm a student. I'm not saying this just for me, but if somebody's got a $30,000 a year debt load and all these things, maybe we could say, okay, it's good that they have a way to get to school to be educated. Education's important. The professors, the corporate office workers, they're having their university or boss pay their fare, so it's a double subsidy. Because who pays for the University of Idaho and Boise State University? Taxpayers. Who's paying for this service? Taxpayers. So now they're double dipping, and that's who's using the system. That is not what we should be funding. That is not the proper role of government, in my opinion. And it's gone on too long. So this year I've really fought it, that we need to find a way to help those who need help most. Uncle Sam, federal government's already got a program that helps them. Why do we continue funding nearly $1 million budget? And then the strong arm continued, and we can jump into that after this question.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear because you mentioned the grant. So what they're essentially saying with justifying this $7-9 million budget. What they're saying is, hey, this service is needed for the medically impaired or the elderly to get groceries. And you're like, okay, is there any other program that offers them rides? They say, oh yeah, there's this separate program over here, which is funded by the federal government. So for instance, Medicaid recipients can get rides where they need to go, when they need to go. It's like, okay, so you're saying we need this $1 million budget on the one hand, but then there's a separate budget that you're not even telling us about for the separate service that does exactly what you're talking about. And they don't have to like drive nine minutes to a bus stop. Like they get picked up at their house. That's right. Transported to the grocery store, pharmacy, wherever they need to go, doctor's office, and then transported back to their house. And that's paid for already through somebody else. So there's a far better customized in-place service that's already servicing these at-need people, yet you're justifying your budget by saying you need to service these at-need people.
That's exactly right. Couldn't have been put better.
Wow. God bless America. Okay. Talk to me about the strong arm.
So, and now we're getting real touchy, and I'm sure some specific individuals are going to be offended by me saying this, but we just received yesterday an email saying, hey, if we don't overturn our decision in July and fund the whole thing, there might be the possibility that we'll lose a grant to fund sidewalks for kids to walk to parks and schools.
Wait, you're going to back up. So they're saying, like, listen, if you don't fund all of Valley Regional Transit, we potentially could lose a grant to help children get to parks on the sidewalk. So help me understand this.
So the sidewalk grant, every grant that the federal government proposes has strings attached. Sure. That's what we got to remember. We learned about that a whole lot during COVID. What grants are we taking? Because there's a lot of things that we might have to do, whether it's a forced mandate, so on and so forth. So knowing this, coming into council as a brand new council member, causing all kinds of waves that I didn't intend or plan to cause, but here we are, know that every grant has this potential string attached. We get an email saying, hey, if you do not fund 100% of VRT, the streets on 7th and 16th, the sidewalks that we were going to add are no longer going to be funded because they're not going to be grant eligible. So where you look on a map, that's to Lakeview Park, that's to Good News Church, that's right by Central Elementary. These are areas where kids need sidewalks, and they say, so if you don't fund this, then that's on you.
Wait, how is it that Valley Regional Transit has anything to do with sidewalk maintenance and creation?
What I assume, and I don't know 100%, this is an assumption, is they're all part of transit, whether it's walkership, bikership, ridership, it's all part of transit. So I'm sure the federal transit system says, hey, we'll fund sidewalks, but you have to fund our government subsidy. And that's Valley Regional Transit. Their whole goal is to do public transit. So if we get rid of the public transit via bus, well, then you aren't eligible to have sidewalks because people don't need sidewalks because they should be using sidewalks to walk to the bus. So they're pulling us every which way. You're not going to have ADA compliant streets now because we're not going to fund making sidewalks for people in wheelchairs. So now it's becoming this thing of you really are going to affect these minority groups because you're not funding the bus, so we're not going to give you sidewalks, or we're not going to give you ramps for your non-ADA compliant sidewalks.
Gosh, man, this is bonkers. So this is their assertion that, hey, we may not get this grant money that's going to help increase compliance with sidewalks, access to bus stops. I could see an argument being made for like, hey, we need more ADA compliance for routes leading to bus stops, Absolutely. Right? And that's how it gets tied in. I'm not saying ADA compliance is bad at all, but how that gets tied into the VRT, Valley Regional Transit kind of program. They're like, hey, if we don't have a bus stop here, or if we eliminate these stops throughout the town, there's no reason for the federal government to give us this money grant to improve these sidewalks on the way to the bus route. So that's essentially what they're saying, which is we need to keep these bus routes because in the absence of this, we can't make the argument to the federal government that we need to upgrade these sidewalks because they don't relate to us.
And I'll have you know, that's me coming up with that off the cuff right now. They did not say this.
Sure.
This is something that's very important to know. Well, rather than giving us a blind, non-transparent budget and saying, approve this, then when we threaten, hey, what are you actually doing with this? And then coming months later and saying, hey, we know you're going to finalize, we're actually going to get rid of your sidewalks, ADA compliance spaces. This is mind-blowing. And this is why I have such an issue with just the federal overreach that we have within even our own cities. The best run city, one of the most conservative cities in Idaho, and I argue the country, we're doing the right things. Our motto is the best place to live, work, play, worship, and raise a family. We love that motto. That's our whole goal in Nampa. But yet Uncle Sam's coming in and saying, hey, you're not getting any sidewalks unless you waste $1 million or $770,000 of taxpayer money, give it to the subsidy that's not being utilized, or we're going to take it all from you. It's not right.
Gosh, man, that's wild.
It is wild.
How much are those? Did they tell you how much those federal grants are?
No, they just say they're going to go away.
And mind you, they're not getting rid of sidewalks. Like, it's not like Valley Regional Transit is like makes sidewalks every year. And if Valley Regional Transit goes away, those sidewalks disappear.
No.
It's more of like, we're not going to continue improving these sidewalk access routes and things of that nature.
Because in Nampa, nobody wanted to be in Nampa 40, 50, 30, 20, 10 years ago. They didn't. So we were approving anything that wanted to get approved development-wise. And we were talking about this earlier.
Right.
So we have slap and stick developments that are coming in that didn't even put in sidewalks. So now we're playing catch up because it's important. And I'm one of the districts where I have kids that do not have a sidewalk to get to Lone Star Middle School. They walk on a 3-foot gravel path with the shoulder right on their shoulder. And when daylight savings comes around, it's pitch black. You have little 11-year-old walk into 6th grade down Middleton Road because they never approved a sidewalk to go in there. Right. It's a tough situation. As policymakers, as decision makers of this, it's tough to stomach. And I'm not coming in to say, hey, let's just blow up every budget to blow up a budget. Let's be thoughtful about, number one, this is not our money. This is my money, and it's your money because you're a taxpayer. But we should be thoughtful and good stewards of what we're spending.
Right.
If we don't completely agree to how they feel, they being the federal government via grants, then they're going to take away our opportunity to create safe spaces for kids. That's not right. And so when you challenge that and say, maybe we call their bluff this year. Maybe we don't fund $770,000 because you can always opt back in. Valley Regional Transit is its own taxing entity. They were formed in the 90s. Maybe it was the early 2000s. They're not going anywhere. And they've said that multiple times to us. Hey, if you deny our budget, it's really unfortunate for your citizens, but we'll be fine. That's what they said. That's not even paraphrasing. That's like a direct quote. That's what they said. So if in 3 years the system's fantastic, maybe we'll opt back in. It'll cost us $1 million or $1.25 million, but then it'll be in a place where we're able to opt back in. So maybe we don't fund it this year. Maybe we say, hey, we for sure didn't fund the $233,000, but maybe we should look at this budget as well because it could be utilized elsewhere. Maybe we just fund paying for those sidewalks on our own. Why do we have to go and beg for a grant when we're wasting money elsewhere that we could go and fund sidewalks for kids to get to schools or to parks?
Right. If the real problem is sidewalks, like, let's address the sidewalk. Let's go to the citizens, to the constituents and say, hey, look, we need sidewalks. But if the real issue is sidewalks, why go through this elaborate plan to get federal dollars that tie us to a system that's being underutilized or costing people way too much per the value they get out of it?
That's right. And it doesn't make sense because we're not a utopian society. Right. We don't want to be. We don't want to be dystopian either, but why are we trying to create this perfect system? They're trying to bring back Amtrak, so the train's running. They're trying to bring back the bus, or they have the bus system. It just doesn't work. They're trying to do all these things, creating 5-minute cities. They're creating master plan communities. I think master plan communities are great. Hidden Springs is one of them. We're in one of them. There's just aspects of this that some things aren't meant to be in certain cities. Valley Regional Transit is not supposed to service Nampa. It's too big. There's not enough money, and this goes back to what you said. $6, $7, $8 million to fund a perfect system. What's that perfect system? Well, then we have routes going up and down every street, whether it be Middleton, Midland, 12th Avenue, every hour of the day, doing stops all along the way, so people never have to drive on the streets again. We just have buses. For $7 or $8 million, we probably could make that happen. We had designated stops, rooftop pavilions where people can sit and live and sing Kumbaya as we hop on to go to the local Walmart. And then we go to the cross street, and then we hop on this one, and then we're doing the zigzag, like we're going back to Orlando, Florida. And it's gonna be perfect. We're a huge metropolitan city. That's not reality. People want to hop in their car. They want to go and buy their Gushers or their Green Onions or their Boise State t-shirt for the big game on Saturday, and they want to get out. They don't want to spend an hour and a half trying to catch each bus and potentially miss it or have an overlap of 30 minutes. That's where we're at.
Right.
We're a conservative community. People like freedom. People like independence. There is a small population of folks that would prefer having public transit, but we're not willing to spend $7-8 million to do that. And frankly, I'm not willing to spend $1 million to do that where it's at right now.
Sebastian, you give me a lot of stuff to think about, man. That's wild. Yeah, I mean, you make a very compelling case, which is, and again, more specifically, recognizing that there's a parallel program that already addresses a large portion of the most at risk or most needy for transportation. If that exists and will exist in the absence of Valley Regional Transit, what's the benefit to the citizens?
And this is where, in District 6 in Nampa, I have three retirement 55 plus communities. I just spoke at one 2 months ago. They do a big potluck. It's a really special place. And so you go in there and you talk to these folks, and they are financially hurting.
Yeah.
Their husband's on hospice. They've got cancer in their medical bills. They bought this little double wide trailer in this 55 plus community thinking, hey, this is all I can afford for the rest of my life because I can't work. My back's broken. My arm's broken. Yeah. I'm 87 years old. I shouldn't be working. That's my demographic of my district. And now we have a lot of new builds because on the ag portion of our site, 82% of the agricultural owners are selling to developers. 82%. It's crazy.
And again, to be clear, that's 82% of the owners. That's not 82% of the ag land.
82% of the ag owners, I believe, but it might be 82% of the land. The entire...
It's a huge chunk no matter what.
It's a huge chunk no matter what. We had a map and we had this discussion, neither here or there. Going back to it.
Sure.
The senior communities, the 55 plus, they're saying we're hurting for this. Literally $50 makes a difference to our budget. If we have to plan for $50 more, it hurts. We have to pull from somewhere. That's how we should be thinking. Now, there are government programs, once again, that are going to help them in times of need, and neighbors are helping neighbors. But when we're funding systems that aren't helping those folks because they have a whole nother program that do, it teeters out for me. I can say with a clear conscience, let's get rid of Valley Regional Transit because those 55 plus communities are going to be taken care of because they're in the senior citizen demographic. They qualify. And then we're going to help lower the tax levy, which is what we all promised that we were going to do when we went and thumped those doors and sent those expensive mailers saying, I'm going to fight for property tax reduction. I don't look at it as anything but exactly what we promised we would do. And this is why we have a budget setting process every year. So a new council member or a new council entirely can look at it and say, you know, this was a great idea. It could have been. This could have been really amazing. We got Wi-Fi on these buses. The seats are dusty, but they're comfortable.
Right.
Like, it's a good system. There's just no riders. People don't want to go and ride the bus.
Right.
People don't want to commute the extra 20, 30 minutes to be locked down and not leave whenever they want.
Right. Because there's a world where we say, hey, Valley Regional Transit, you have done your job. Mm-hmm. You have provided a safe, effective, clean, useful resource to the community. No poo-poo on you.
No.
But the community doesn't use it.
That's right.
And that's it. And everybody's made whole. You have fulfilled your obligation. This is not a requirement for our citizens to get on with their lives. That's reasonable. Sebastian, have we missed anything?
I don't think so.
Okay. Well, this is just one topic. I'll have to have you back in. We'll talk some
I
other
would love
stuff.
to be back. I hope
great.
I gave enough detail. I think it's just important. We have that vote on Monday. On August 19th, we're voting officially whether we're going to renew or undo our previous vote for that $233,000. And maybe we'll be funding VRT again. I promise you this much, I'll be fighting it next year when we go budget setting, because we can put the cart in front of the horse and right in front of the horse, but it's still in front of the horse.
Right.
Our demographics aren't there to ride the bus. We're not going to see waves of people running to the bus station 2 miles away from their house to catch the bus to head to Boise.
I appreciate that. Thank you for coming in, sir.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
MTU Studios is the proud producer for the Ada County Sheriff Podcast, the Idaho Wildlife Federation Podcast, the State Representative Ted Hill Podcast, the Idaho State PTA Podcast, and many more. If you or your organization is thinking about starting a podcast, MTU Studios would love to help. Just check out mtustudios.com.